An idea that has always intrigued me is that of people's differing perspectives. One of the hardest questions to answer is the idea of consciousness and trying to really understand what it is like to truly be another person. I mean, try it. If you think about it, you know, it may seem easy at first, but really think about absorbing into another person. We're talking their temperament, their mindset, their past experiences, maybe little subtle biological differences we don't even comprehend yet. I mean, being someone else is really a big deal. You can't even really comprehend what it would be like. But in order to kind of figure this out a little bit, make it a manageable task to tackle, I decided to focus on one attribute, and that being people's mindset. Now, obviously, there's a varying amount of mindsets. There's probably an infinite amount of them. But I decided to focus on three for the sake: optimism, realism, and pessimism. So I thought it would be interesting to take 3 high school students who all prescribe to different notions of these previous schools of thought, and from there be able to ask them the same set of questions and then juxtapose their answers against each other to see kind of where their differences lie.
I can't give you like a day or a time, but I think probably for like my entire recent high school, middle school life, if you asked me to pick one, I would always pick an optimist.
Going into the college process, because I think getting your hopes up for certain things is very naive, so might as well just go in with the worst is going to happen.
I realized that I would say probably there's summer in 9th grade, all my friends, they don't work at all. And you know, little me is working every day from like 8 to 4. At this point I realized sometimes you gotta go through bad things to be happier in the future. I think that's the realist, you know what I mean?
Interesting answers there. Did you notice that the optimist was the only one who didn't have a concrete moment of realization, but rather just a vague time frame? And I guess this kind of makes sense, because you wouldn't think that there's that many events that could turn someone into an optimist than, let's say, a pessimist, for example. So our next question concerns how these individuals think their lives were impacted by their mindset. Let's take a look.
It kind of like gives you what you need to like, if something's not working, like the optimism is like, okay, like I can make this work with enough like effort put in. So it's like that you can get a positive outcome from something that starts out negative. And I guess if it negatively affect me, would maybe like, I think a lot of time I'll expect people to change because I have like optimism that things will work out, and I think a lot of time people don't change and things don't work out, and then I'm just kind of like disillusioned, I guess.
Makes you feel stronger than others, and it makes you, even though you might just be as weak as everyone else, but it makes you feel a little armor with you. I think because when you see someone like who's always all like happy all the time, who's very, oh, things are gonna be fine, things are gonna be okay, I roll my eyes at that because I just don't think that that's true, and I think it's very like there's no substance there with that phrase. When you're around people who are like really excited and you're not, just because you're preparing for the worst, like specifically when I'm going to school in California, like moving across the country, everyone's like, you're gonna have so much fun, everyone's like, it's gonna be crazy, whatever, but I'm like, why don't I wait till I see how I get there? Because I think hyping it up in my head is kind of dangerous, because it doesn't look like that.
It helped me, I would say it helps me be more concise and consistent. Very firm in my ideas. Like I know, like, oh, if I go down this route, like I can expect what's gonna happen here or this route. So it kind of like just guides me. I don't really need to think much about these very like long things that like maybe pressure on other people. But on the flip side of that, I may think about things too simply, which could really hurt you if you really underestimate a problem.
Oh, hi there. So this question, I think, brought out some really interesting points to the surface. Did you notice how Sarah made that point about using pessimism as an armor against high expectations? I thought that was particularly interesting. And then also, did you notice how the optimist only saw flaws in his mindset due to factors outside himself, things he couldn't control? So I thought those were really interesting answers, and that actually sets up our next question, which I want to juxtapose the pros and cons versus if they really enjoyed the mindset that they have. So let's check that one out.
No. I think this is really what works for me.
Okay.
No.
I wish I was an optimist. Just because I feel like they have more fun. Because they come in, they're idealistic. They don't have to think about, they don't want to think about the bad things.
Did you notice how both the optimist and the pessimist take the stance where they wouldn't want to change their mindset? And the realist is the only one who rationally looks at the idea and kind of weighs that optimism probably would be a more sustainable approach to life. So I thought that was interesting. But to get to the root of this question, I really decided to ask, why do you think the way you do?
I don't know. I don't think it's anything that's happened to me. To me, it feels like it's just like like how I was, like this is just who I am. But it's hard to separate, like what you're like born with and what you pick up over time. But
well, obviously growing up with my mom and my two aunts, the three of them, like they're strong personalities. I have three different voices in my head, so it's like, what's the worst case scenario from mom and then my two aunts?
Pessimist just doesn't seem like it always seems you're trying to contradict yourself. Optimist sounds like it may just be, it's really just not my mindset. I cannot think about it. So realist, I think it's just like you narrowed it down for myself.
Did you notice that the optimist is the one who was very vague in his answer to this question? He didn't know exactly why he was one, while the pessimist could almost exactly pinpoint what it was about her upbringing that kind of turned her into being a pessimist. So on this idea, I wanted to focus more on their environment in which they found themselves to live and how maybe that might give us some insight into why they are the mindset that they are.
I haven't asked them, but no, I don't think all of them are. No, I think a lot of my friends are much more like reality-based than me. And definitely my dad is like very realist.
My Aunt Louise is annoyingly optimistic. My Aunt Amory is extremely pessimistic. And my mom is in the middle, like she worries a lot. I feel like I was programmed to worry.
My friends, I would say, most of them would be a realist. Maybe lean a bit more to the pessimistic side. Family, I would say that they're very optimistic, which I lack in.
I guess it really isn't surprising to see that the pessimist is the one who had two anxious parents, and even by the wording Sarah used in that phrase, saying that she was programmed to worry, I think it really gives us a good insight into how a pessimist might be made, and the root causes to some of her things. But also, did you notice that the realist says that they came from optimistic parents? I think that was kind of interesting because it almost says that maybe an excess of optimism will drive someone to need reason or some sort of fact in order to justify it. So I think that will get us to our next question. So after answering that question, hearing the answers to those questions about their influences on them, I wanted to know if they believe that they have some sort of agency in deciding on what mindset they have.
Like maybe, I think it'd have to be like, I can't decide to change it. It would have to be like something happens to you in life that you really have to like reevaluate the way you've been thinking.
I'm trying to change the mindset just because it holds you back from certain things. Like you're too scared to enjoy something. So I'm trying to change the mindset. I think it's possible. You gotta talk to that like bully in your head.
No, I don't think you can change it. I think once there's always gonna be this one impactful event in your life. From that moment forward, it's very hard to change unless you really meditate on it.
Did you notice how the optimist took the stance that he doesn't really think that his mindset is something he could change, but in fact, it would have to be an event outside himself to change it? Also, did you notice that the pessimist took the stance that she does think it could be changed, but it was something that would require a lot of inner conflict in order to resolve? Also, the realist gives the classic realist answer of saying no, and he further qualified that by saying that that there's usually some sort of event that happens early in a person's life that defines their thinking from that place forward. After asking the question on whether or not mindsets are plastic, I decided to ask the subjects if they think that one mindset is better than the others. Let's see their answers.
Yeah, I do. I really do think it's best to be an optimist just because you're always gonna be pushing for the best outcome.
No.
So you think they all have their like merits?
Yeah, I think it just becomes like your mindset kind of just becomes part of your character. You know?
No, but I do think pessimist is worse. Because pessimist, I feel you're always looking at the negatives. Realist, you're kind of wishy-washy. You're in between. Sometimes it's on some days you think, oh, this may go well. Sometimes not. Optimist, you're always on the good side. But I feel like if you always, there's that that saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But for pessimist, I feel like you expect the worst and really prepare for that. And it's really hard to like savor when something good happens, because you're always on to the next thing. Oh, like not to prepare for this, and it may be awful, and etc.
Did you notice that our optimist believes that it's best to be an optimist because they believe that it gives them, perseverance and it helps them always push for the best outcome? Our pessimist, in fact, saw the flaws with all of the mindsets and said that none are really better than the others and that they all have their problems. While the realist took the stance that realism and optimism are at the same level, while refuting pessimism, saying that idea of preparing for the worst and only accept and really not being able to enjoy when the good things happen is just, he said, was innately worse. So I thought that was really interesting. But I decided to now ask how they think that their mindset may have influenced the interests that they have. So let's figure out that one.
Well, I think being an optimist is, I'm mostly interested in like making stuff in art, and I think optimist is really good for that because you kind of like, you have to like make something out of nothing, and if you aren't optimistic that like you can like work through something and like figure it, like there's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
A lot of music I listen to is just like dark. It's like just people who are just like a lot of the like Alice in Chains, all that stuff. Everyone's just like depressed and does not have a good outlook on life.
I don't think it really has. It only influenced my decisions.
Our optimist seems to believe that his optimism kind of pushed him towards creating art and having more creative fields because, you need that motivation to get past that initial seed. While the pessimist couldn't really attribute more to her interests and her mindset more than, her music taste or something.
I have to ask the classic question. Describe that water bottle.
This water bottle is.
So I have to ask a classic question. Describe that water bottle.
Describe it. Oh God, have empty.
Classic question. Describe this water bottle.
I have water bottle right there. Half empty, half full, or I think it's
No, it's any interpretation.
it's a water bottle with water in it.